I'm Chance Dorland, and this is the Spurs Insider, our weekly NBA podcast from ExpressNews.com. And I'm joined now by San Antonio Express News sports writer Tom Orsborn. So, Tom, you recently covered Rudy Gay. The Spurs won their season opener, and there's still the ongoing issue of the week of hell, as I'm going to call it, when the Spurs lost 3 point guards to injury. Not all the same injury, not all the same timeout, so we'll try to tackle all of that here on today's episode. First off, great to have you back. What did you think of the season opener?
Yeah, thanks, Chance. It's my pleasure to be here. It was kind of the template for what we're going to be seeing a lot this season. Games that are unusually high scoring for the defensive-minded Spurs, close games that go down to the wire. They're loaded with offensive firepower with Rudy Gay, as you mentioned, and LaMarcus Aldridge and DeMar DeRozan. Some good scores off the bench, but the defense is lacking after the injury to DeJounte Murray. So we're going to see a lot more games like this. But it was great seeing how they finished. They finished very well in this game. Some unlikely guys rose up, came off the bench to help DeMar DeRozan close out that game, and that was really cool to see.
What's really interesting about this season opener is that it kind of shows about what a team would look like if what happened with Kawhi Leonard had gone much more south. That I know a lot of people are not happy about it. I'm not particularly happy about what happened with Kawhi Leonard, but it could have been much worse than that. Could you talk about really the difference between the two teams that played?
Yeah, the Timberwolves had more than their share of turmoil during the offseason and during training camp with the Jimmy Butler situation, a guy who does not want to be there. And, of course, the Spurs went through that as well, although the difference being Butler has been more vocal and his actions, there's a little bit more acting out on his part, whereas Kawhi said virtually nothing. Which was annoying and aggravating to many fans, but it's just kind of a different, more intense situation there in Minnesota. But the Spurs, they had their share of adversity in the offseason as well during training camp with the injuries. So you had two teams that came into the AT&T Center on Wednesday night that had kind of been through the fire in training camp, and the Spurs prevailed. But, to get back to it, what Minnesota's going through is just much more intense with what the Spurs went through, a much more ugly situation that the Spurs went through with Kawhi Leonard.
So let's talk about the man that replaced Kawhi Leonard, DeMar DeRozan. What do you think of his performance?
DeMar, he struggled at first with his shooting. Same goes with LaMarcus Aldridge. But boy, there's so many facets of his game, I think, that Spurs fans weren't expecting. The passing, just an excellent passer, and he's had to work at that throughout his career. This is his 10th season. He didn't come into the NBA or even hit the midway point of those 10 years with the passing skills that he possesses now, but he has really worked at it. And I think one of the reasons that Aldridge had an off night shooting was that he wasn't ready to be open as much as he was with DeRozan on the floor. DeRozan drew a lot of attention away from Aldridge, and then the passes that DeMar would get to LaMarcus somewhat caught him off guard. So that's a good problem to have. I mean, you got a great passer and another great scorer in Aldridge. They'll figure it out. But, I thought he was just great. Down the stretch, he scores the final 6 points. He was overjoyed to hear his teammates come to him during the huddles down the stretch in crunch time and say, "Hey, DeMar, close it out for us." And those were the words that he wanted to hear, to have his teammates right off the bat show that kind of faith and trust in him. It really made DeMar's night, and he delivered. So I thought it was a really good performance, a sign of things to come. He's going to be the Spurs' go-to guy in crunch time, and the shooting will work itself out. He'll shoot better. Aldridge will shoot better. Those guys, their chemistry will come together as the season goes on. But it was a really promising start for DeMar DeRozan.
So let's shift focus from DeMar DeRozan to Rudy Gay, who I mentioned earlier you recently covered.
Yeah. I had, you and I, Chance, talked about it earlier, the time that I spent with him during the summer at a charitable event that he put on in Baltimore, getting to know his really, really great family, great people. I had the greatest time with those guys. But, Rudy told me when I saw him in Baltimore, he said, "Man, I'm feeling really good. I'm 100% healthy finally after going through the blown Achilles in January of 2017. That limited him to 30 games in that season, and then he had the problems with bursitis in his heel last season that forced him to miss about 25 games." And during the preseason, he missed a game as they treated him for heel issues again. But that was only there was a precautionary move. They just wanted to make sure he was 100% coming into the season. And man, did it show up! His good health really showed up in the opener. While LaMarcus and DeMar struggled with their shooting, Rudy was good right off the bat. He hit 8 of 12. Knocked down some deep outside shots. Just played well. Just a really good night for him. 18 points. That's what they're going to need. They're going to need that third scorer to emerge, and Rudy seems like he's more than willing, more than ready to fulfill that role. Just a good game by him, and it's kind of neat seeing a guy, Chance, that is so enthusiastic, and you can see the injury cloud lift away from him, and you can see how happy he is to finally be healthy. And it also helps that he's playing with DeMar DeRozan, one of his best friends in the league. I mean, Rudy right now is poised to have a great season, and it's really cool to see, knowing the injury problems and the adversity that he went through.
So we've just covered two people that seem to be doing well, DeMar DeRozan, Rudy Gay. Let's talk about the flip side of that coin, the week of hell. That's my patented way to describe what happened. We discussed this in depth on the previous episode when that was happening, when it was very fresh. It's still very fresh now. Tell me about what's going on with these three players.
Yeah, it's just really tough. The team was really deflated. Devastated was the word that Greg Popovich and Rudy Gay used to describe how those injuries impacted the mood at Spurs Lane. We like to call it Spurs Lane. That's the practice facility. Yeah, it was devastating to see those guys go down. Everyone on the team and the organization, the fans, the media. We're all looking forward to seeing what DeJounte Murray could do, see the growth that he would exhibit after going through a full off season of working on his shooting, his outside shot. He's good around the basket. He has that athleticism, but the mid range shot, the outside shooting was a weakness of his. And until he could eradicate that, defenses are going to be collapsing off of him. So everyone was looking forward to it. He's coming off a year in which he was second team all defense. The sky seemed like the limit. It was the limit for him this year. And to see him go down really hurt. It hurt too because the Spurs wanted to play an up-tempo offensive game this year, and DeJounte was going to be the catalyst for that attack. So, yeah, just a tough injury to see him tear up the knee and go through that. So, but he's determined to get back. And I spoke to Tony Parker in Dallas, Chance, who the longtime great point guard of the Spurs, who DeJounte replaced last January. And Tony told me that he called DeJounte shortly after the injury to offer words of encouragement to him, Tony knows what it's like to go through a devastating, career-threatening injury. So I think that probably lifted DeJounte's spirits. His teammates all rallied around him. Coach Pop rallied around him. So I think he's going to be fine. He'll get through the rehab and probably come back a better man for having gone through that adversity. And then, we had Derek White, who was going to replace DeJounte and seemed like more than a capable replacement at point guard with the growth that he's had over from his rookie season to now. He goes down. So, it was just a really, really tough time for the Spurs. And on top of that, the injuries started with Lonnie Walker, the first-round draft pick. So it was just one thing after another. It was really hard for this team to go through, but I think they came through it pretty well. They regrouped pretty quickly, which you would expect under the leadership of Greg Popovich. And the silver lining might be Bryn Forbes starting at point guard, just getting more reps, more games under his belt, which can only help that young man.
We got plenty of time left on today's episode, Tom. Let's return to that season opener. More thoughts on that?
Yeah, Chance, what really stuck out to me was third-year forward Davis Bertans, the Latvian sharpshooter, as we like to call him, coming off the bench and just playing a great game. The statistics weren't overwhelming, but he contributed in so many different areas in that fourth quarter. Greg Popovich showed a lot of faith in Davis, playing him 10 minutes in the fourth quarter, which was totally unexpected, but he showed faith in him. Bertans knocks down 2 big three-pointers. We know he's got that aspect of his game. That's what he does well. But to see him also, he had 2 big assists, set up DeMar DeRozan for a great rolling finger roll to the basket, a layup that was crucial off a design play by Greg Popovich. And he also had a huge rebound in the final seconds that set up DeMar's 2 free throws that sealed the game. So, if Bertans can play like that throughout the year, he's really going to give them a lot. They need someone that can stretch the court, and Bertans certainly can do that. With all the mid-range shooters they have, they need that outside threat. The other guy that I thought was just outstanding was Marco Bellinelli, the veteran three-point shooter, who's now in his second stint with the Spurs after having played with them during their final championship season in 2013 and 14. Bellinelli, Chance, is just thrilled to be back. He loves playing for the Spurs, loves their system, loves Pop, loves the fans, loves the city, has great memories here. And you can just see it in the way he's playing. He moves so well without the ball, does so many things offensively off the bench that put pressure on the defense, has that great outside shot. He's got that short memory. If he misses them, big deal. He's going to keep firing away, which is what Bertans needs to pick up and start doing. I thought Bellinelli was great. I also liked his defense, which isn't something that he's known for, but he was very active defensively. So, those 2 guys, those perimeter shooters really stood out for me. And I think if those guys can keep it up, it can help the Spurs go a long way to surprising the people that are picking them to win games, in the 30 win category. I think they can do a lot better if those 2 guys continue to play well.
And then finally, Tom, we already mentioned the elephant that I think is still in the room when you're talking about the San Antonio Spurs. Did you check out that Toronto game at all?
Yeah. We were there was a lot of talk about that post game from guys in the media while we were waiting to go into the locker room. Guys were checking highlights and the stats out of Toronto. And Kawhi played great. Danny Green played well, and it's hard for Spurs fans to stomach. I mean, it really is. I've written, I went up to Toronto and did a piece on Kawhi from their media day. And it wasn't well received by the fans. I mean, they don't want to read about him.
Yeah, and I hear he didn't get a lot of comments for going all the way up there, right? It's a little hard to dig in.
Yeah, no, but it was something we thought we had to do, and I'm glad we did it. The big takeaway from it was him saying, "I have no regrets," which I think spoke volumes for Kawhi Leonard. He has no regrets. He doesn't regret it not working out here. He doesn't regret leaving, and that only adds to the consternation of Spurs fans. He's really
that's a little bit of a twist of the knife there. Yeah, that doesn't come off well.
No, not at all. It was great seeing Danny Green, though. I really enjoyed seeing Danny, and
important to note, not the same situation there at all.
No, not at all. Not at all. I think fans will give him a nice ovation when he comes back. And the other thing, I went up to Dallas last week and caught up with Tony Parker.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah, you talk about a guy that's happy. I mean, he needed a fresh start. He's been very honest about talking about that. He's in a situation now. It just seems like he's got a second wind at this late juncture of his career. He's playing with his good buddy Nick Batum, who he played on with the French national team for years. He loves Michael Jordan. That was his idol. So he gets to play for his idol, the owner of the Hornets, the majority owner. James Borrego, the coach of the Hornets, his former assistant here. He has a great relationship, and Tony's really taken charge of that team. He's kind of taken ownership of it, the locker room and the court. He's a great mentor to their young players, which they have several of. And, he opened up with 7 assists in a losing effort. But I think Tony's going to have a good season. And it was great to see a good guy be happy like that.
And it's always great to have San Antonio Express News sports writer Tom Osborne join me on the Spurs Insider, our weekly NBA podcast from expressnews.com. For the San Antonio Express News, I'm Chance Dorland.